So thank you for joining us today for the 2022 Hospitality Outlook. As I go around town, it really is heartening to see so many of our local businesses thriving once again, with resident and visitors as customers. So if we'll move to the agenda slide, we'll give you a rundown of what's to come this morning. So I'm Vic Isley, President and CEO of Explore Asheville, and happy to be your guide today. So I'll first give a brief overview of where we stand with air service and hotel inventory. And then we will hear from several exciting partners that are working on hotel and food and beverage projects coming to our community in the next year. Then we'll hear from Adam Sachs from Tourism Economics. Adam's been working with Asheville and Buncombe County for a number of years now, looking at annual visitation, contribution to community, and forecasts. So this morning, he's going to share a market-specific forecast for Asheville and Buncombe County, and also taking into account national and global considerations as we look at the year ahead. Then we'll wrap up with a moderated Q&A section. So if you look at your bottom bar, there's a Q&A quotes, and you can just drop your questions in the Q&A section, not the chat section, as we go, and then we'll have a moderated Q&A discussion at the end of the session. So let's get to it. Last month at the Buncombe County Tourism Development Authority board meeting, Tina Kenzie from the Airport Authority was able to give us an update on air transportation. So we want to share some of that with you today. While we know that the majority of visitors arrive by car, that would be, airlift really does help us expand our markets and support our efforts to increase the length of stay of visitors in our community. So you may remember in 2018 that the airport served 1 million passengers for the first time in its history, which was a huge milestone that was celebrated significantly at the airport with community partners. Then, amazingly, 2019 saw a 43% growth, and they served 1.6 million passengers. Then the pandemic significantly dropped air service, as we all know. But 2021 ended up at 88% of 2019 and 125% of that million passenger mark in 2018. The next slide will show direct air service routes. So with leisure travel still paving the way and driving demand for air travel, the airport worked really diligently to recover all direct air service routes from prior to the pandemic, and then some. In fact, currently, we have more direct service coming out of AVL than we do in Greensville to our south. So great job, Tina and Lou. If we go to the next slide, you'll take a look at what's coming in 2022. So JetBlue, the first time flying into AVL, will join Delta in service from Boston to our community in June of this year. And also Delta will join Allegiant in adding Saturday service from Minneapolis to Asheville. Returning and growing this year, you can see American and Delta. American returns in June with summer daily service from Chicago to Asheville. And Delta started daily summer service from LaGuardia to our community March 7th, so just a couple of days ago. And United will start service to the New York metro market out of Newark this month. As you may know, the Airport Authority has been working for a number of years on plans for a new airport terminal. And they anticipate to start construction on that at the end of this calendar year. So very exciting opportunity for our community. I think it's important to note that while visitors support this air service for and into our community, it's also a bonus for us as residents to be able to access these many nonstop routes. Now we're going to turn our attention to lodging inventory in Buncombe County. As we know, visitors and guests come and stay in our hotels and vacation rentals, but it's really the rich natural and cultural experiences that bring them here. But hotel inventory helps us with an overlay of the visitor experience here in our community. So as we know, there's much discussion around the number of hotels and hotel rooms in our community. So I wanted to take this opportunity to level set where we are as Asheville and Buncombe County compared to other regional communities. So you can see the red bar there is we're currently sitting at about 8,800 hotel rooms in the county. Going to the far left, you see Wilmington, North Carolina at about 7,000 hotel rooms. And then ranging across the bottom scale, you can see Chattanooga coming in at 11,500, Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge at around edging up to 18,000, Savannah over 18,000, Charleston now at 23,000, and then Myrtle Beach in South Carolina at nearly 30,000. So what's interesting about this is that residents in Buncombe County take an average of about 3 trips themselves per year. And many of these places that have more hotel rooms than Buncombe County are places that they frequent. So it's really important to understand the balance of how we're feeling as a community and also how we're acting as a community when we travel. And we're going to be taking a closer look at that as we go. But we're looking at the forecast here coming up. So we wanted to share with you properties that are currently under construction and then give a preview of some of these exciting projects that are coming up. What you see here are anticipated projects that are currently under construction with estimated project opening dates. So you can see in the rooms category in the third column, we have a total of 516 rooms that we anticipate to open in the next year, going through our fiscal year of 23. And that indicates about 6% growth in total room inventory. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mike Scavo, Corporate Director of Hotel Operations at Jeffrey R. Anderson Real Estate. And he's going to talk with us about a downtown project, the Restoration Hotel. So Mike, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to present this. We're so excited about coming into Asheville, and we're looking forward to getting the place open. You know, we've been working on it for a little bit, and the construction delays have slowed us down, but we're still looking to, open here in the fall sometime, August, maybe end of August, early September. So if we go to the next slide, we can take a look at who we are. We are a very small branded chain. We've got one hotel operating currently in Charleston, and excited to move into Asheville. And you can kind of see what we're trying to do. I can read this for you, but you can take a look at it. We are really looking to become part of the community. We love the community in Asheville, and we spend a lot of time there already, and we'll continue to spend a lot of time in there and get woven into what the feel of Asheville is and what the culture and what the climate and everything is there. So we're looking forward to, openings, not just a hotel, but we're going to have 3 food and beverage outlets in the hotel. And being a part of downtown, right in the heart of Asheville, across from the park, is going to be, exciting for us. Be part of the drum circle and all those things that go on there. So if we can move to the next slide, that would be great. So we are going to have, 60 rooms, and they're going to be a little bit oversized. Somewhere between the 450 and 650. We're going to have a string of rooms on the 3rd and 4th floor that have balconies that overlook Pritchard Park. And we're going to be doing a lot of the amenities, that you see listed here. We are going to have valet parking using the parking garage behind us. As if anybody's familiar with the area, that's an underutilized parking garage. So we're going to rent some spaces there and use that space as well, so we can keep the parking off the street. We are going to be pet friendly. We're going to have an in-house fitness center, and we are going to be doing some in-room spa services as well. So next slide, please. part of what we're trying to accomplish here too, being 6 floors, is we're going to have 3 food and beverage outlets and a huge meeting space. We're going to have 3,000 square foot. And if you look at the top image, it's kind of a rendering of what the space is going to look like. It's got 18 to 19-foot ceilings. It's got the big skylight and windows on the, front and back of the room that go all the way up to the ceiling. So it's going to be a well-lit, clean, crisp room, but still, going back into what Asheville's all about. It's going to be very approachable. We're going to have a little pre-function area, as you can see on the map there. But then next to the pre-function area, we're going to have an outdoor rooftop lounge. And it's going to be overlooking Pritchard Park once again. It's going to be, you can kind of see the mountains from there. You can see all the way to the Grove Park from up there. And it's going to be a really fun, comfortable place. We'll put a fireplace and just make it very loungy and comfortable for people to sit. And then on the same floor, which the whole floor is going to be called the observatory, we're going to have a bar and lounge up there. It's going to have some snacks and shareable items, but it's going to be very floral and very just comfortable and very true to the nature of what Asheville is all about. And then our next one is going to be what we call the Draftsman. And the Draftsman is going to be on the lower level coming off of Commerce. If people know the building very well, it's an old bank and there's entrances on both sides of it, on the Patton side as well as the Commerce side. And when we look at the Draftsman, we kind of wanted to make it more of a local kind of hangout. So it's going to have a feel of, almost like a basement type thing. It's going to have a little retro cool bar down there. We called it the Draftman to pull off, many different meanings, but it's going to have a couple lanes of bowling down there and some retro video games that will change from time to time. It's also going to have its own separate approachable menu that, will have some handhelds and shareables and things like that as well. You can rent that space out or just be part of it. You can get to it through the hotel or, like I said, through the Commerce level on the back side of the building. And then next, we have the Exchange. And the Exchange is going to be, as you walk into the hotel, you can kind of see the rendering there. It's going to be a full service, larger hotel with some outside seating that we're going to have in front of the hotel. It's probably going to seat up to 225 people. It's going to have a full bar. It's going to be more of the farm-to-table type food and a little bit chef-driven. We're looking to do some partners with people in the area. We are going to have our coffee roasted there. We've talked to a couple companies already. We're going to meet with some farmers and things like that and get a lot of our goods and services, through the community itself. We call it the Exchange once again because it kind of ties back into what the whole bank process was and the exchange of ideas and having good conversation and just a good, comfortable, approachable, community-minded restaurant. So that's kind of what we're about. We're looking, hopefully Labor Day will be our first weekend open, but we all know with the construction supply chains that we've had in the past, it might just be a little bit difficult. But if anybody wants to get in touch with me or anything, we are going to have some previews of the hotel once we get some floors ready and do some walkthroughs and hard hat tours. So please feel free to reach out to me. I think that we've got some information that you can get a hold of to get a hold of me. So I think that's what I've got.
Great. Thank you, Mike. And next we have Philip Wolcott up to share some information about the Flatiron Hotel. Philip?
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be part of this event and appreciate the invitation to participate. My Flatiron Preservation Group journey started, I can't believe it was almost 4 years ago in 2018 when the opportunity presented itself. And I wasted no time in getting to Asheville, my hometown, and getting the property under contract and assembling a great team to restore this iconic building. The history of this building is, as we know, such an integral fabric of the community of Asheville. And our team is very excited and very honored to have the privilege to restore this building to its original glory. As you can see from some photos here, this is the building built in 1926 which actually housed the original location, excuse me, of WWNC. So you can see the old antennas there on the rooftop, which interestingly enough were almost the same height of the actual Flatiron building itself. But this obviously iconic building. It's been it was an office building built originally by L.B. Jackson, and it served the community of Asheville first and foremost as a medical office building during its first several decades in service. And our team approached it with, how do we restore this great building, pay for all the capital improvements and much needed work that needed to be done to it, and preserve it first and foremost to be enjoyed by the community of Asheville. Really tourists second. We thought it being such a central focus of downtown and such an iconic property, we really wanted to look at what the community of Asheville wanted, and preserving this and reactivating the property for the next generations to come. And after careful deliberation on that, it was determined that a boutique hotel was the best use. And so we're really excited to sort of show you some high-level plans to date. We are a little behind Mike and his team there at the restoration on Patton, but I wanted to give you sort of a little idea of what we've got planned here. The building is with the rooftop is 9 stories. So we are going to have a really exciting activated rooftop lounge, really capitalizing on those beautiful westward views towards the mountains. We will have a street level restaurant on the ground floor with a nice inviting lobby bar. We will utilize the outdoor sidewalk dining, which will be very nice for the street level patrons. We're also contemplating a speakeasy in the original boiler room in the sub basement. And then on the second floor, in sort of paying homage to the fact that the building was an office building for its sort of first chapter, we are going to have some really dynamic, creative co-working space on the second floor, which will be available for local businesses and local people to enjoy and utilize as they see fit. And we are going to be independent. We'll be locally owned and operated. We have teamed up with Indigo Road Hospitality Management Group based out of Charleston, South Carolina, and they will be overseeing the management of the property, both on the hotel and the food and beverage. We do control and parking a lot around the corner, so we will offer valet parking for not only our hotel guests, but also our patrons for the food and beverage venues. And we're really excited about delivering a really authentic guest experience here at the Flatiron. Each of the rooms are going to be a little different, just the nature of these old iconic buildings. And so there'll be neat nuances and quirkiness throughout the building that our guests will be able to enjoy. And as I sort of stated earlier, again, we really, this project is all about reactivating this beautiful building for the community of Asheville. And we felt like this use with food and beverage, some co-working space, as well as the lodging was just the right fit in order for us to do that. So locals can come and enjoy the building, bring their friends. Obviously, they can have friends stay there overnight that are visiting Asheville and really enjoy a true, authentic historic building right downtown Asheville. So thank you again for allowing me to participate, and we look forward to sharing more details in the coming months. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Philip. Very exciting. Next, we'd like to invite William Norris, Development Director for Hatteras Sky Development, to share with us details on the Radical as well as Zelda Dearest So William, if you can turn your camera and mic on and join us, that would be awesome.
Perfect. Can you hear me, Vic?
Can hear and see you. And the two
Perfect.
the two hard hats. So great decor for your presentation this morning.
I like it. We are under construction on both the Radical and Zelda Dearest projects. So actually had our construction meeting this morning. So was able to get back over here to one of our office spaces and be able to join everyone for the presentation. So again, want to echo what my two counterparts have shared. Really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of detail about the Radical and Zelda Dearest. Both of these have been passion projects for our ownership group, and we've been working on them for several years. Unfortunately, the pandemic did force a delay in our schedule, but happy to report that we are under construction with both properties. The rendering that you're seeing here is basically our primary elevation for the Radical. Our group basically has the 95 Roberts building that sits adjacent to the roundabout, heading basically the main and main for folks heading from West Asheville over into downtown and into the River Arts District. Really excited about this building, 1922 concrete and masonry warehouse building. The project does include a significant amount of tax credit equity. So I think one of the great things for the city is that you're seeing both our projects that are restoring some existing buildings and the Flatiron building, really trying to kind of restore the history of Asheville. And that's really what we're trying to do with both the Radical and Zelda Dearest. If you'd like to flip the slide, I can share a little bit of information about our project team for the Radical. So we are going to be 70 guest rooms. We do have our F&B programming for the property, includes a 3-meal restaurant that'll sit at the 3rd story with a terrace, basically in the courtyard space between the 95 Roberts building and the Film Mechanic building. We'll have a rooftop bar. And then we'll have basically a coffee bar outlet that'll be modified into an evening bar that'll sit right off of Robert Street on what is technically the 4th floor of the building. Can't say enough about our team. There's a couple of local groups that have helped us from day one. Jeff Dalton, Row House Architects, has been integral to the design and planning of the project. Beverly Grant is our contractor. Excited to report about our interior design group. It's Mike Sumi, based out of New York. He and his team have put together just an unbelievable program for us, and look forward to being able to share some more images of our planned lobby and amenity spaces as we get further along with the project. We have engaged a group called Lark Hotels to be our operator. Rob Blood and his team operate a lot of boutique properties in the Northeast, Kennebunkport, Portland, several other kind of markets that we see parallels between kind of the type of guests that they cater to and what we're seeing, basically the potential for the Asheville market. So we are able to share a couple of images for our model rooms that we did inside the building. So I think this is going to give you a bit of the flavor of what we're trying to do, where we're trying to be respectful to some of the existing artists that are in the community, and really try to utilize the height that we've got in the building. So every guest room will have basically 12-foot ceilings. So our design team basically put together a program where we're really accenting the height with the canopy shrouds that you'll see over the guest room beds. Real excited about being able to deliver kind of a product that feels very upscale for the River Arts District. If you want to go to the next slide now, I think it's actually on our Zelda Dearest project. So basically, the Radical is going to stand alone as an independent brand. We feel like that was the appropriate path for the first hotel in the River Arts District. But our Zelda Dearest is the first of what we hope to be 2 or 3 other projects that will happen in kind of more of the downtown and South Slope neighborhood. So we are currently restoring 3 historic homes to build out to be a 20-key boutique property. This project basically is falling underneath the Zelda Fitzgerald brand. So each one of the properties basically play off a story for a key period of Zelda's life, both in Asheville and when she was away from Asheville. Really excited. This is going to be another project that Lark Hotels is going to be operating for us. Anderson Design Studio out of Nashville, Tennessee is our interior designer, and our general contractor is Griffin Builders. So really excited to basically restore these 3 historic homes that sit directly south from the Orange Peel, kind of in the northern part of the South Slope neighborhood. Both of these properties should be open by summer of 2023, and we'll keep the Explore Asheville team updated as we get closer to our opening dates.
William, thank you so much. To Mike, Philip, and William, thank you for your thoughtful projects. The adaptive reuse in our community is really exciting. How you're tying storytelling to place, we appreciate, and we look forward to having you as part of our tourism community and entire community. So with that, we're going to turn our attention to the meat of the presentation for our hospitality outlook. And we're going to turn it over to Adam Sachs, who is founder and president of Tourism Economics, an Oxford economics company dedicated to understanding the relationship between travel and the economy. He's been a longtime partner with Explore Asheville, working on, again, understanding the importance and value of visitors to our community. And so, Adam, we look forward to hearing from you today with your crystal ball. So we're going to have you share your screen and walk us through your story.
Thanks, Vic. It's good to be with you again. I mean, we have been through quite a journey over the last couple of years. And what I'm going to share with you is going to be framed as a story. And if you remember from English class, any good story has certain elements. It has a setting, it has characters, it has conflict, it has an antagonist, and hopefully has a hero and a resolution as well. I'm going to share everything within that framework of a story. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that what we have experienced and are in the process of experiencing is nothing short of an epic saga. It is the most severe downturn that the travel industry has ever faced in modern history. And we are in the process of experiencing truly the most remarkable recovery. And Asheville, particularly at the leading edge of that in a lot of ways. So hopefully that makes sense as a framework for what I'm going to share, and gives us a bit of a structure for content on this epic story of a travel recovery. And I'm going to try to put Asheville within the context of this overall story. So let's go ahead and get started. If we think about this in 4 chapters, if you will, the first chapter is that of storm clouds and resilience. And of course, storm clouds have a way of gathering and then parting and then gathering again. And we certainly are not fully out of any sign of inclement weather. And so the question is, well, amidst all of that, how has travel responded to all this external adversity to the industry? And what does that tell us about the future? Well, I'm going to start with a viewpoint from our friends at Longwoods International, who are running a survey every other week of U.S. travelers. And I want to point out a couple of things from the data that was just released yesterday. The first is how are people responding to COVID-19 in terms of their travel plans for the next 6 months? So let's start on the far right side. 34% say that COVID-19 now is not influencing their travel plans at all. And most strikingly, that is a significant improvement from about a month ago when it was 25%, only 1 in 4. Well, now it's just, it was 1 in 4 that said there was no effect. Now it's 1 in 3. And so you can see a dramatic improvement. Well, the same is true across all the other metrics. For example, those who are reducing their trips, well, back in January is 31%. Now it's only 24%. Those that were not traveling at all, well, it fell from 11% to 7%. Those canceling trips due to COVID-19, well, it fell from 10% to 6%. What we are witnessing is an incredible rapid healing of the psyche of travelers toward an eagerness to travel. And that bodes very well for the outlook. And what is particularly interesting to me as I look historically at the way that travelers have related to all of this is that if you look at air travel as a starting point, look what happened in the fall when Delta variant really peaked. Well, air travel only slipped a little bit from the peak in the summer where it was at 80% of 2019 levels down to 76% in September, which coincided with a shift from leisure to business travel importance anyway. So not a significant dip, and then a quick rebound to 79% by the time we got to October, and then November and December at 84% of 2019 levels. Well, then you remember in January, Omicron just tore through the country, and we didn't see very much of an effect on air travel at all, a decline from 84% to 81%. And February, it came in at, again, that peak level of 84% of 2019 levels. And United's latest earnings report kind of bears this out. They said, yeah, we saw some near-term effect on demand, but bookings for March and beyond are very, very strong. And we see a continued recovery for demand, including international and business. So there's been sort of a shrug among travelers in relation to what's going on in the external health environment. And it's interesting to me when I look at what our friends at Destination Analysts are showing, that those ready to travel now at around 82%, back very quickly from the dip experienced as a result of Omicron. And so the dip was very modest and it was quite temporary in nature. And so we can look forward toward the prospects for travel with the understanding that travelers appear to be very little affected at this point by what's going on in the external health environment. And of course, within this, Asheville has experienced a truly dramatic recovery. I'm looking here at room revenue, and I've indexed every month to the same month in 2018, just so that you can see the overall kind of growth path for the total, as well as for bed and breakfast and hotel. Now, I've taken out short-term rentals just so that you can see the hotel market and the total market. But remarkably, right, in the fall, we reached 156. That is basically 56% above the same month in 2018. And that is dramatic because if you go back to the spring of 2020, we were at just 7% of that 2018 level. But again, a quick recovery, making up ground in the summer of 2020, and then continued progress through 2021, which really was when Asheville experienced full recovery. Now, if I add to that what happened in vacation rentals, you see that the growth there and the recovery there has been even more dramatic than in the traditional hotel market. So the main observation from this chapter is that the recovery has been sustained despite these external worries, and that's been particularly evident in Asheville. But the question moving forward, I think, is among the key questions I want to ask is the economy going to help sustain continued travel demand? Will the recovery and will continued growth be sustained and supported by the economy? And I think that the short answer to that is yes, with a couple of concerns that I'll get into. Let me share with you why. First, the labor market continues to be very strong, with 678,000 jobs added in the month of February, as high as it's been since, July of last year. And if you want to look at that in terms of the overall trend, we're now just 2.1 million jobs short of where we were before this all began. A pretty dramatic recovery when you realize that 22 million jobs were lost in February, March, and April of 2020. So now shy 2.1 million jobs from that pre-pandemic peak. And the unemployment rate at the same time has fallen within about 2 years from 15% down to 3.8%. That is truly a record of correction in terms of healing in the labor market. At the same time, households have accumulated wealth, now around $130 trillion in household net worth. But what's interesting is that happened as people saved, right? They hoarded cash during the pandemic. That savings rate has now come down to kind of a historic average over the last 10 years of around 7%. And that's important because it means that households are shifting from saving toward consumption. And that, in part, is consumption that is being directed toward travel. And in fact, services are rapidly gaining ground in terms of the way that people are spending their money. During the lockdowns and during the darker days of the pandemic, people spent mostly on goods. Well, now what we're seeing is a strong recovery on the services front in hospitality sectors, recreation sectors alike, and almost fully back at a national level. And so this shift in the way that people are spending their money is really important as we look forward to what are the prospects for the travel industry. Now, consumers have plenty to be worried about, there's no doubt. And those worries have even certainly increased over the last few weeks with the situation in Ukraine. Consumer confidence remains relatively steady, and that's a survey conducted by the Conference Board, whereas consumer sentiment, which is a survey conducted by the University of Michigan, has fallen rather precipitously. And so the question is, which of these matters for us as we look forward to the travel industry? Well, I think it's more confidence in the sense that people are still spending. And retail spending, for example, is now at about 20% ahead of pre-COVID levels and not showing any real signs of falling off. The latest data actually shows further strengthening. And part of the reason for that is that wages are up. Right? Wages are up in the range of 5%, whether it's in goods industries or services industries. And so that income growth in combination with the savings is what's continuing to sustain that increase in travel spending. But what does this mean for the U.S. economy? In the big picture, I think we need to recognize that the U.S. economy is about to experience a pretty sharp slowdown. The data for Q1 that we're looking at in terms of leading indicators for January, February, March for the U.S. economy show a big slowdown. Number of reasons for that, right? One is the effects of Omicron that really started us out in the year that did produce a pullback in spending, particularly among businesses and the investment sectors. The other would be inflation, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But what we do expect is that the U.S. economy is going to pick up pace in the second quarter of this year. So think about Q1 as a speed bump for the U.S. economy after a pretty hot Q4, annualized growth of nearly 7% in the fourth quarter. But Q1, real soft, followed by a bounce back in Q2. But what this means for the U.S. economy is that this year, we're expecting growth of 3.5%. That's above average for the U.S. economy, comes off the heels of a very strong 2021 at 5.7% GDP growth. And it's a much faster recovery than we saw during the great financial crisis. If you look at that chart, you can see that the great financial crisis took about 3 years from when it started to when the US economy was fully healed. Well, we reached that benchmark in about a year and a half, right? So less than half the time it took for full recovery in the great financial crisis, we've already full recovered. So it's more of a traditional V-shaped cycle where this downturn was very severe, but the recovery has been very, very brisk. And it's for that reason then that the main point that I want to make in this chapter is that the underpinnings of the economy do remain strong to sustain continued travel. But that does lead to the natural question of what could possibly go wrong? What are the risks to this forecast? Or put within our story context, who's the enemy here? Who are the potential antagonists in this story? Well, I think we can identify several, right? The first certainly is the war in Ukraine, Russia's invasion in Ukraine, and a number of risks there that we'll talk about. Extended COVID-19 headwinds, right? We certainly hope that and believe all the worst is behind us, but it does not mean that there is not, future risks in that category. Runaway inflation, another important risk we want to think about. And then the last one is labor force constraints. So let me share a few perspectives on these in particular. The first is inflation, and I'm going to combine that with the risks in terms of the Ukraine conflict because they're very much related. If you look at the latest data for inflation, you see the spike, and a big part of it in that reading at around 7% year over year is energy, right? If you take out energy, used cars, and airfares, you're looking at inflation around 3%, which isn't all that frightening, right? But when you add in all these other components and the reality that energy prices are increasing right now, we have to ask the question, how big of a risk is this to growth? Certainly gas prices are adding fuel to the fire of inflation, and energy price increases are likely to continue, right? You probably saw the news releases that gas prices reached the highest levels in history in the most recent week. I would put a little bit of a caveat on that, which is that these are nominal prices, right? These are not inflation adjusted in the way that we would look at prices generally. And so yes, $4.30 a gallon is very, very concerning. And the fact that they're likely to go higher is concerning. But on an inflation adjusted basis, it actually is not correct to say that fuel prices have never been higher than they are right now. But one of the related issues is labor shortages, because labor shortages are pushing up wages. And right now, the job openings rate in leisure and hospitality is around 9%. That means for every 10 jobs, there's about a job opening within leisure and hospitality, much higher than the total for the US economy. But indeed, this is what is contributing to the picture of a challenging labor market and a challenging wage environment, which is feeding inflation. The quit rate within leisure and hospitality is also about double what it is in the rest of the economy. So our industry is more acutely faced with this challenge of a tight labor market. And in fact, if you look at job losses through February, no sector has lost as many jobs as the accommodation and food sector, and remains some 1.3 million below where we were before the pandemic. Now, here's a potential off-ramp for this. Labor supply rebound. And this really, this combined with additional work visas, international work visas, these are kind of levers to help us get out of this. And it's encouraging to see the labor force participation rate continue to rise. It hit a post-pandemic high in February at 62.3%, but we're still down, over a full percentage point right now. And so that labor force participation rate needs to continue to rise for us to see relief on the labor front. But the reality is, the other lever at the industry's disposal is increasing wages. If we want to bring people into the industry and into the labor force, well, wages is the one lever we have. And of course, we're seeing the industry respond in that exact fashion. Leisure and hospitality wages are up 13% year over year in the latest data, which is, of course, much higher than the overall economy at 5.7%. So one of the key questions for the risk in inflation is it eroding this wage growth? And the answer is yes, it is eroding it. If you go back into 2020, you can see that earnings, if we index it again to 2019, pacing well above the consumer price index or the travel price index in the gray line here. Right? And so purchasing power among travelers was really strong throughout this whole period of 2020 through the first half of 2021. But what you'll see on the right hand of this chart is these lines converging. And what it means is that advantage in terms of purchasing power has nearly fully evaporated, right? Now, it doesn't mean that travel is more expensive. In fact, relative to earnings, travel costs are still below where they were. However, I would expect these lines to completely converge, and with gas prices that headed where they are, the travel price index is likely to outpace hourly earnings. And so we will be facing a situation as we move through this year where the available income relative to the cost of travel will become a headwind instead of a tailwind. Add to that interest rate hikes, and this is the complexity of the situation for the Fed, where the Fed very much wants to tamp down on inflation, but at the same time, there's so much turbulence in the market with the situation in Ukraine and with energy prices. Nevertheless, we do expect the Fed to begin to increase interest rates later this month with a 50 basis point increase. It could be just 25 basis points given the situation in Ukraine. This is all evolving very, very quickly. But that is going to tap the brakes on the U.S. economy as well. And one of the reasons why we expect the U.S. economy to slow down a bit relative to last year. But the big picture here is that we're not out of the woods yet on inflation, but we do expect as we get to the second half of this year, inflation will begin to ease. Supply chain issues will continue to resolve, and energy prices are likely, and a lot of uncertainty here, but I think most likely that because the pressure on the Russian economy is so acute right now, that by the second half of this year, we do expect some resolution to the point where we begin to see energy prices fall as well. So the main point that I want to share with you from this chapter is, the enemies of this recovery are formidable, right? But whether I look at inflation, labor force constraints, the situation in Ukraine, COVID-19, while they all represent headwinds and risks to the outlook, they're all more than likely going to improve as we move into the second half of the year. So let's move to the final chapter of the story, travel forecast milestones. The real question is, how does this story end? How does it resolve, at least within our horizon that we're going to look at together? What's the conclusion of the story? Well, let me share with you a few thoughts on where we think this is all headed. Well, let me start with the latest data from Longwoods. They've been running this survey now for 2 years, and never before has this metric been as high as it is in the latest reading released just yesterday. 92% of travelers say they have traveler plans in the next 6 months, and it is an all-time high within this 2-year period. Add to that MMGY's Traveler Sentiment Index in the fourth quarter, while it came down a bit, really being pushed by Omicron, is still, if you look at this more than 10-year period, at an all-time high. So not only pre-pandemic, like the last 10 years, it's never been as high as it is. And I think it reflects the reality that travelers, having been in some way restrained from travel over the last couple of years, are more enthusiastic about travel than they ever have been. And so with all that taken into account, the economic view, the risks, some of the headwinds that we've looked at, and where we are in the cycle, I want to present to you our latest forecast for Asheville room revenue. And this is room revenue from all sources, short-term rentals, B&Bs, as well as the traditional hotel market. And 2021 registered $591 million in hotel room revenue, right? But let's look at 2022. Our baseline outlook, and when I say baseline outlook, that's what we think is kind of our most likely outlook, right? It takes into account the risks on the upside and the downside, and it is our middle of the road outlook. $649 million in hotel and other accommodation type revenue. That is a 10% increase over 2021. Now, there's a lot of upside possibilities to that. In fact, if some of these risks really relent in the coming months for the calendar year 2022, we could see up to 21% growth in the market. And indeed, if you look at the latest data for this year, so January, February, and even early March data, you're looking at room revenue that's pacing some 30% or more higher than 2021 levels. But we don't think that that's sustainable for the whole year. There are a number of reasons for that. Some of them are the effects of inflation that are going to bite as we move into the summer. Other reasons, some of the high rates that were charged in 2021 will be difficult to build on. And then also the comps get more difficult as we move into the latter part of this year because 2021 was such a good year. As we move into the spring and the summer months, beating those performance marks is going to be more and more challenging. And so that's why the range is actually as wide as it is. The downside scenario is actually that if some of our risks really present themselves in more acute fashion, and that would be on the COVID-19 front, as well as on the prolonged inflation front, we could see actually a decline in room revenue, but only of about 3%, right? So even our worst case scenario is not all that bad because it just shows a bit of slippage off of what was a really excellent year in 2021. Now, if you want to move to 2023, the baseline outlook is for a further 6%, building on that 10% growth this year. The downside is that we make up for some of the lost ground in 2022 with 10% growth in 2023. And in the upside scenario, while having increased 21%, the further growth expected in 2023 is a bit more modest at just 3%. So that's a range of possibilities. But all of these are good outcomes. And let me share with you another way to look at this, which is looking at that room revenue in each of those three scenarios relative to 2019. So 2019, consider that the pre-pandemic benchmark at 100%. Well, in 2020, room revenue fell 27%. In 2021, remarkable recovery. We're now at 33% above 2019 levels. And so having achieved that growth over the benchmark year 2019, the 22 outlook is in the baseline that we achieve 40% growth over 2019, right? With a range of 61% on the upside, best case scenarios, we see it on the downside, 29%, just a bit of a slippage from 2021. All right, so this is a view of how things could turn out. I would tend to look at the baseline for kind of benchmark planning, look at the upside for the real possibilities of what's achievable as well. On the downside, what you'd want to hedge against as far as kind of worst case scenarios. All right. And let me point out, since I've just shared with you our forecast, I recognize that predictions don't always age well. And I realize that those in glass houses should not throw stones, but I do want to put a little bit of context to predictions. Here's a couple that I think are relevant in terms of recognize that predictions don't always do particularly well. This one, we don't like their sound, and guitar music is on the way out. Well, this was on the Beatles by Decca Recording Company in 1962. For their exquisite evaluation of talent, they are no longer in business, but still famous for this prediction. This one, he's a very good offensive player, but won't turn the franchise around, made by none other by Rod Thorne on Michael Jordan. The best part about this is that he's the guy that drafted him and perhaps trying to set expectations at a reasonable level. And then thirdly, here's one. There's no chance that this product is going to gain any significant market share. Well, made regarding the iPhone by Steve Ballmer in 2007. So why am I sharing these other than it's fun to look at past predictions and how poorly they performed? Well, here's the reason, because we're in the midst of predictions being made that I think are equally tragic. And in fact, this is the one that I want to reference. This one made in late 2020 that more than 50% of this is going to disappear in a post-coronavirus world. Well, this was made by none other by Bill Gates. He said that it's regarding business travel, that in the wake of COVID-19, 50% or more of business travel will permanently disappear. And while Asheville is primarily a leisure destination, the meeting segment is still important. And so business travel is still something that we care about. But here's the reality, that 65% of businesses, according to BCTDA, are already traveling right now. And if you add in those that plan to begin traveling in the next 3 months, you're at 8 in 10, 79% of companies that say they're either already traveling or plan to be traveling in the next 3 months. And United in their latest earnings call says they expect business demand to rebound by the end of February to where it was pre-Omicron. And they're seeing significant growth from there. And perhaps no more striking a view of how the market sees this than if you compare shares of Hilton and shares of Zoom, share values of Zoom, if you index to the beginning of the recession or the beginning of the pandemic. And of course, you see Zoom, the value of Zoom, would we all have known to buy Zoom in February of 2020, spiked. But here we are now, Hilton, having actually surpassed the value of Zoom indexed to pre-pandemic. And I think it's indicative of the way the market realizes the importance of meeting together is not going away. And virtual meetings, while they are valuable, are no substitute for the importance of meetings and events. And so the big picture for Asheville, and I'm gonna end in just a few minutes here, so thanks for staying with me, is that while you experience that severe downturn, a 26% decline in overall visitor spending, you've already fully recovered. Right? So from $2.2 billion in visitor spending in 2019, down to $1.6 billion in 2020, but last year coming in at $2.9 billion. That's 31% growth in overall visitor spending, not only lodging, but things like restaurants and retail and transportation and recreation and entertainment. Our expectation is that this year, in the baseline outlook, visitor spending in Asheville will be 75% higher than it was back in 2015. So indeed, a severe downturn and a dramatic recovery. But this recovery, it is absolutely about more than just the lodging sector. If you look at 2019 data, you see that the lodging sector represented 27% of all of visitor spending. And so the restaurants, an equal beneficiary of visitors compared to the lodging industry. The retail industry, nearly as important when we think about visitors' contribution. The recreation and entertainment sector, some 13%, and transportation, 11%. And it even goes beyond that, because if you look at employment generated by visitors and how that links through the rest of the economy, one of the key beneficiaries is actually business services, because they are providing business services, whether it be accounting or financial management or insurance or banking, any of these sort of business services. Well, they're being provided to the hotels, the restaurants, the retail shops, the entertainment companies, and the transportation companies. And so through these economic linkages, there is no sector in the Asheville economy that does not benefit from visitors and those dollars as they flow through the Asheville economy. And as we look forward, I want to just encourage what you all are doing in concert. It matters significantly. According to destination analysts, travelers are ready to be inspired. When asked at this moment, how excited are you in learning about new exciting travel experiences or destinations to visit? We see a spike in the latest data. People are receptive to marketing and interested in new destinations. So the opportunity for you working in concert with Visit Asheville is significant, because you're able to reach an audience that is ready to listen. And in fact, as I look at data that we compile within the Symphony platform on website traffic across some 300 destination websites, we are seeing continued gravity toward destination DMO, CVB websites around the country. In fact, starting in the spring of 2020, if you follow this blue line with me, what you'll see is that interest measured by organic searches to DMO, CVB websites surpassed 2019, the gray line, in every single week, starting in the spring of 2021. And here we are in 2022, this light blue line, and we see that we're exceeding those benchmarks yet again. And so again, the importance of what you're doing cannot be highlighted enough. So with that, let me just end with one question, which is, who's the hero of the story? We've talked about every part of this, the setting, the overall context, the antagonist of the story, where we think it's going. And I think it's fair to say that the hero of the story is actually the travel industry. It's you, and you have been the ones who have, throughout this incredible crisis, worked incredibly hard. You have innovated, you have collaborated, you have, in some cases, I know, taken pay cuts to make sure that your staff were able to continue. And you pivoted where you needed to, and you worked extra hours as needed. And you're seeing the results of that. And the reality is, you've done it not just for yourselves, but you've done it for your teams, you've done it for your community. And for that reason, I do applaud you as the heroes of the story, the ones that have seen Asheville through a dramatic decline and are now realizing the benefits of that, not just for the hotel industry, not just for the hospitality industry broadly, but for the entire Asheville economy. So thank you very much for having me with you. It is truly a pleasure.
Thank you, Adam, for taking us through that riveting story and giving us hope, which I think all of us here in the community are feeling. We know we have continued headwinds to consider, but to see residents back at work, to see customers back in our businesses, and to see the positive outlook for our community, I think is a testament to all of that teamwork. So we have in the Q&A, we just had a couple of questions for some of our hotel partners that we'll answer individually. But otherwise, I think your presentation was so thorough that we have no questions from partners. I'll give just a minute before we close out to see if anything drops in the chat. But Adam, thank you. To Mike, Philip, and William, thank you. And as always, to the Explore Asheville team, appreciate all that you do. And to our hotel partners, thank you for all that you do as residents of our community, employers in our community, and business owners. So we look forward to another year of success together, and look forward to seeing you in 3D soon. Thank you, everyone.